Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. We were sitting at Olive Garden when she said it. The kind of sentence that doesn't sound like a bomb until it explodes in your chest. She looked me dead in the eye, her voice calm, almost casual. I have my own life, Mark, and it doesn't always include you. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, pretending I didn't hear what I actually heard. She smiled like it was nothing, reached for her phone, and scrolled through her iPhone as if I wasn't sitting across from her. I remember the sound of her nails tapping the screen. It was louder than anything else in that room. The waiter brought the check. She didn't even look up. I paid, left the tip, and walked her to the car in silence. She hummed something under her breath, some pop song playing on the radio, and I realized that humming had replaced our conversations a long time ago. That night, I sat in the driveway, engine off, lights dimmed, just watching the house. My Ford F-150 reflected the porch light like it was waiting for a decision I hadn't made yet. At 1:13 a.m., she texted me again. I just want you to understand. My life doesn't always include you. That's not a bad thing. I read it twice, then 3 times. And for the first time in months, I didn't type anything back. In the morning, she brewed her Starbucks coffee and moved around the kitchen like we were strangers sharing an Airbnb. She wore that same robe I bought her last Christmas, the one she said felt like a cloud. Now it just looked like distance. Later that day, I saw it again, the way she smiled at her phone. A name flashed for a second, reflected in her glasses. Ryan. Someone from work. Someone who texted her more than I ever did. Something in me shifted. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even pain. It was quiet. Heavy. Final. That evening, I finally replied to her message. From now on, it doesn't include me at all. I left the phone on the counter, grabbed my jacket, and walked out. The sound of her notifications followed me to the door, each one sharper than the last. By the time I got into the car, she was already calling. Over and over. I didn't answer. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the windshield gold. For the first time in months, I felt still. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw her silhouette in the window, phone pressed to her ear, frozen. She finally realized the silence she'd been asking for wasn't abstract anymore. It was real, and it was hers now. I drove away without looking back. I didn't go far that night. Just parked behind the old gas station off Highway 19, where the lights flickered and no one asked questions. I sat there for hours, phone face down on the dashboard, listening to the silence that finally belonged to me. She kept calling, 32 times. Each ring was shorter, more desperate than the last. Then the messages came, one after another. Where are you? Can we talk? You're overreacting. By sunrise, the call stopped. That silence felt like proof that she'd already moved on long before I drove away. I checked into a cheap roadside motel, the kind with flickering neon and broken blinds. The air smelled like bleach and loneliness. I left my phone on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling until sleep came like a slow collapse. When I woke up, there were 37 new messages. Some were apologies. Some were explanations. And one was a picture of us, from last summer, smiling at the lake. No caption, just the image. I deleted it without opening it fully. It didn't feel like us anymore. It felt like evidence from another life. By noon, I was walking through a Walmart parking lot, coffee in hand, wearing the same clothes as the night before. My head was clear for the first time in months. I wasn't planning revenge, or a speech, or anything dramatic. I just needed to disappear long enough for her to realize what that actually meant. People don't notice what's gone until the silence gets heavy enough to echo. That afternoon, I checked my bank app. 2 transfers I didn't recognize, small, but recurring. Ryan's Graphics, LLC. The name hit harder than her words ever did. It wasn't just emotional distance anymore. It was money. I sat there, staring at the numbers, and something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, clarity. She'd built a separate world, one that ran parallel to ours, and I had been financing it without knowing. That's when I decided to vanish completely. No warning, no scene. I pulled everything into motion quietly, switched off location sharing, transferred my savings to a new account, changed the password on everything that still had my name attached to hers. The silence between us wasn't punishment anymore. It was precision. That night, as I watched the sky fade outside the motel window, my phone lit up again. Her voice on the voicemail was trembling, softer than I'd heard in years. "Please, Mark. Just tell me you're okay." I didn't play the rest. I turned the phone face down again, and for the first time, it didn't feel like running away. It felt like finally stepping out of her shadow. The motel room became my hideout for 3 days. I barely left, except to grab takeout from the subway next door and refill my coffee at the gas station. Every few hours, I checked my phone just to see her name on the screen again. She kept trying. Short messages at first, then longer ones. By the third day, her tone had changed. It wasn't anger anymore. It was fear. She asked if I was safe, if something had happened. I didn't reply. The silence was my answer. By the fourth night, I had a plan. I wasn't going to expose her or start a fight. That's what she'd expect. Instead, I wanted to see who she really was when I wasn't around to absorb the blame. I drove back into town, parked 2 streets away from the house, and waited. Her car was in the driveway. Lights on. Music low. I saw her silhouette moving from room to room like nothing was missing. She didn't look broken. She looked free. But then something strange happened. A second car pulled up, silver Toyota Camry. Ryan stepped out. I knew his face from her office parties. Always too friendly, always lingering too close. He walked in like he'd been there before. No hesitation. No guilt. The same man she told me not to worry about. I watched from the truck, hands steady on the wheel. I didn't record anything. I didn't need to. The image itself was enough. A quiet truth doesn't need witnesses. I left without being seen. The drive felt longer than it should have. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I just felt done. There's a point where love stops being pain and turns into data, something you just process and file away. I reached that point somewhere between the empty fields and the neon glow of a Waffle House sign. The next morning, I called a lawyer, not to file for divorce yet, but to start understanding what silence could cost me. I didn't want revenge, I wanted strategy. Everything I'd ever built, every hour I worked for, every dollar, she'd been spending it like it was hers alone. I wasn't going to let her rewrite that part of the story. That evening, I received one more text. "Mark, please. Can we fix this?" I stared at it for a long time before locking the screen. She was finally reacting to the absence she had created. The panic wasn't about losing me. It was about losing control. And the truth was, that's exactly what she had lost. I didn't answer her text. I didn't block her either. I wanted her to feel the uncertainty she had built for years, wondering, waiting, replaying every word in her head. By then, I'd already rented a small apartment on the other side of town. Empty walls, one chair, one mattress on the floor. Peaceful. My kind of quiet. I spent the first night there watching the city lights through the blinds, realizing how heavy freedom can feel at first. It's like silence pressing against your ribs, reminding you that nobody's coming to fill it anymore. On the third morning, I started gathering evidence. Not because I wanted to use it, but because truth has a strange way of becoming power when you hold it quietly. Bank records, emails, transaction logs, all linked back to Ryan's Graphics LLC. He wasn't just a distraction. He was a partner. The payments matched weekends she claimed were team retreats. Even the timing fit too perfectly. While I was fixing things around the house or working late, she was transferring money to the man she told me not to worry about. That afternoon, I drove to her office. Didn't go inside. Just sat across the street in my car, watching people come and go. I saw her laughing near the entrance, Ryan next to her. They looked like a couple who'd never had to lie about anything. He touched her shoulder when he spoke. She didn't move his hand. It wasn't betrayal that stung. It was how easy it looked for them. When she finally noticed me sitting there, her expression froze. Just for a second. Then she pretended not to see me. That second was all I needed. She wasn't ready for silence that looked back. I drove to the coast that night. No destination, just movement. I stopped at a gas station, grabbed a sandwich, scrolled through my phone out of habit. Missed calls, voicemails, messages. One voicemail caught my attention, not because of what she said, but how she said it. Her voice cracked halfway through. "Mark, please. I can explain." That was the first time she sounded unsure. The control was slipping. I didn't delete the message. I didn't save it either. I just let it sit there, like a turning point I didn't need to touch. When I checked into another motel that night, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Same man, different eyes. The exhaustion was gone. The waiting was gone. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to her. I was simply done. And that realization was louder than any fight we'd ever had. The next morning, I decided to disappear completely. I called in sick at work, turned off my phone, and drove west until the ocean swallowed the road. The motel I found was small and quiet, the kind of place where no one asks for your last name. The clerk slid the key across the counter without looking up, and that was exactly what I needed, anonymity. I spent the next few days walking along the beach at sunrise. No phone, no watch, no noise. Every step felt like a slow reset, like my mind was clearing itself of her voice. By the fifth day, curiosity replaced anger. I opened my laptop for the first time and started digging, not into her phone or messages, but into him. Ryan. Public records, business filings, social media. Everything looked clean on the surface, but patterns always leave traces. And his pattern was arrogance. Missed payments, disputes with clients, tax gaps. Small cracks in an image he'd tried too hard to polish. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth to find its own way out. So I sent a short, anonymous email to his biggest client. Nothing dramatic. Just screenshots of public documents, a few payment discrepancies, and one line. You might want to verify where your money's going. No signature, no clue it came from me. I closed the laptop, went outside, and let the ocean drown out every thought that tried to follow. 2 days later, I checked the news. His company had been flagged for investigation. The headline was small, local, but enough. By the time I scrolled through Facebook, the gossip had already spread through her office circle. People love a false story, especially when it's dressed as karma. I didn't smile, didn't feel proud. It wasn't satisfaction, it was balance. That evening, I turned my phone back on. 48 missed calls. Her messages had changed again. No more anger. No explanations. Just panic. She wrote, "Everyone knows. I can't go to work. What did you do?" I didn't reply. She had built that house herself. I only turned on the light so she could finally see what it looked like. As the sun sank below the horizon, I watched the waves erase footprints from the sand and realized something simple but powerful. Silence doesn't destroy, it reveals. And now, it wasn't me who was disappearing. It was her control, fading one unanswered call at a time. A week passed before I drove back into town. The air felt different, like the world had shifted half an inch while I was gone. Her car was still in the driveway, but the front porch light was off. I parked 2 blocks away and watched from a distance, letting the quiet fill the space between us. The same house that once felt too small for 2 people now looked like an empty shell. I went to the diner near Main Street, the one we used to visit on Sundays. I sat by the window, ordered coffee, and watched her through the reflection in the glass. She was inside too, across the room, with her friend Emily from work. I almost laughed. Same place, same table, but the way people looked at her wasn't the same. They whispered. Emily leaned in close, her expression tense. The headlines had done their work. Everyone knew Ryan's company had collapsed. Everyone knew she had been part of it. She looked tired, her hands shaking slightly as she stirred her coffee. When she finally glanced up, our eyes met for a second. Just 1 second, but it was enough. Her face changed completely. There was no arrogance left, no control. Only the look of someone realizing she'd burned every bridge without noticing the smoke. I paid the bill and left before she could stand up. My truck felt like armor now, silent and heavy. I drove to the river and parked, letting the sound of water replace the noise in my head. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. I ignored it, but curiosity won. The message was short. I need to talk to you. Please. That night, I didn't sleep. I wasn't angry or restless, just thinking about how easy it had been for her to make me doubt myself, and how quickly that illusion broke the moment I stopped reacting. Silence wasn't absence anymore. It was presence, just on my terms. The next morning, I went back to the diner. The waitress recognized me and asked if I'd like the usual. It hit me then. I'd been here long before her, long before the noise. This was my place, my life, just paused for a while. As I drank my coffee, I saw her outside, standing by her car. She looked smaller than I remembered. She wasn't walking toward me, just waiting, like she didn't know how to start anymore. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to help her. The silence between us wasn't cold, it was closure in progress. For 2 days, she didn't call. Then the messages came again, longer this time, heavier. She wrote that she couldn't sleep, that everything was falling apart, that she missed us. She said Ryan had vanished after the investigation started, leaving her to face the questions alone. She claimed she had no idea about the money transfers. I didn't answer. I read every word, but I didn't feel anything. Not anger, not pity, just distance. That evening, I drove past her house. The lawn was overgrown, the blinds half closed. She used to care about the little things, fresh flowers on the porch, candles from Target in the windows. Now it looked like no one lived there. I parked at the corner for a few minutes, not to spy, but to confirm what I already knew. She was unraveling. Silence was doing what arguments never could. I started going back to the gym, to work, to the life I'd put on pause. People noticed the change. "You look different," they'd say. I'd just nod. I wasn't different. I was finally myself again. The quiet became a rhythm, something steady. I stopped checking her messages. I stopped replaying the past. It wasn't healing, it was evolution. One night, as I was leaving the gym, she was there, standing near my car, waiting. Her hair was messy, her eyes red. For a second, she didn't look like the woman who told me I wasn't part of her life. She looked lost. She said softly, "Mark, I just need 5 minutes." I didn't speak. She filled the silence, words spilling out faster than she could control. She said she'd made mistakes, that she didn't see what she was destroying until it was gone. She asked if there was any way back. I finally looked at her and said, "You had your own life. I'm just letting you live it." Then I got in the car and drove off. She didn't follow. I could see her in the mirror, standing there in the dark parking lot, frozen. The quiet that followed felt heavier than any goodbye. It wasn't about punishment anymore. It was gravity, everything returning to its rightful place. That night, I didn't think about her once. I fell asleep before midnight, something I hadn't done in years. I realized then that peace doesn't arrive when someone apologizes. It arrives when you no longer need them to. I didn't see her again for almost 2 weeks. During that time, everything around me started to settle into a quiet order. Work was steady. The gym helped clear my head, and I'd stop checking my phone every few minutes. The silence that once felt sharp now felt clean. But one evening, just as the sun was dipping behind the buildings, I saw her again, this time outside my apartment. She was sitting on the curb, arms wrapped around herself, a paper cup of cold Starbucks coffee beside her. When she saw me, she stood up quickly, almost stumbling. She looked thinner, pale, and completely unlike the woman who used to hold the upper hand in every room. She said she didn't know where else to go. She said no one was answering her calls anymore, that even her friends at work had distanced themselves. Ryan had left town without a trace, and his downfall had quietly taken her with it. I listened without interrupting. She kept talking, her voice cracking between guilt and confusion. "I thought I was just taking time for myself," she said. I didn't realize I was cutting away the only thing that ever kept me grounded. The words hung in the air, fragile and trembling. I didn't argue. I didn't try to comfort her. I just stood there, watching someone who had once controlled every part of my world now trying to hold her own together. She asked if we could sit down, just talk, like before. I agreed, not out of weakness, but because I wanted to see if she understood what she'd done. We sat in silence for a while. The city noise filled the gaps, cars passing, a siren in the distance, a couple laughing across the street. She looked at me like she was trying to find the man she'd once ignored. But that man was gone. I told her I wasn't angry anymore, that I had nothing left to fix. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I saw genuine regret, not manipulation. When she asked if there was still a chance for us, I didn't answer right away. I told her, "There's a difference between forgiveness and return. I'm not sure which one you're asking for." She didn't respond. She just nodded, eyes down, as if she finally understood that silence isn't always rejection, it's clarity. When she left, she didn't look back. And for the first time, neither did I. The following week felt eerily calm, like the air right before a storm that never comes. I hadn't heard from her again, but her silence didn't carry the same weight it once did. It wasn't power anymore. It was surrender. She had finally stopped reaching out, and that absence said more than any message ever could. I knew she was struggling. People talk in small towns even when they think they're being discreet. Her job was gone. Her reputation cracked. Emily had stopped speaking to her, and Ryan's name had become a warning whispered around their old office. One night, I stopped by the diner again. The same seat by the window, the same coffee, the same quiet hum of conversations around me. I caught a glimpse of her through the glass across the street. She was standing outside the pharmacy, holding a paper bag, staring into nothing. Her shoulders were hunched, movements slow, like someone carrying invisible weight. It was strange, watching her like that, not with anger but with recognition. She finally looked how I had felt months ago, hollow. Later that evening, as I was getting into my car, I saw her walking toward me. No makeup, no defenses. She stopped a few feet away and said quietly, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to say thank you for leaving when you did. If you hadn't, I never would have seen what I'd become." Her voice broke halfway through, and for a moment, it felt like time folded on itself. The same woman who once told me I didn't fit into her life was now standing in front of me, completely emptied of the world she chose over us. I told her I was glad she saw it for what it was. I didn't raise my voice or reach for her hand. I just looked at her and said, "Sometimes people have to lose everything to understand value." She nodded slowly, eyes wet but calm. Then she whispered, "You were my safe place, Mark. I just didn't realize it until there was nothing safe left." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the quiet street. I stood there, not chasing, not reacting, just breathing. The strange thing was, I didn't feel victory or pain. What I felt was closure, the real kind, the kind that doesn't need noise or revenge, just peace. When I got home that night, I didn't replay her words. I didn't need to. The silence she left behind wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. Weeks passed, and for the first time in a long time, my life felt balanced. The chaos had burned itself out. The mornings were quiet, the air clean, and even the routine things, coffee at the diner, evening drives with the window down, felt new again. I didn't think about her every day anymore, but when I did, it wasn't with bitterness. It was with the calm understanding that some endings don't need to be dramatic to be final. They just need to be real. Then, one Saturday morning, she showed up at my apartment. I hadn't seen her in over a month. She looked different, simpler somehow. No heavy makeup, no polished image. Just jeans, a faded hoodie, and eyes that carried both apology and exhaustion. I opened the door, but said nothing. She stood there for a moment, unsure, then quietly said, "I'm not here to fix anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for all of it." Her voice didn't shake this time. It was steady, almost peaceful, like she had finally stopped pretending. She told me she was moving out of town, starting over. Said she'd gotten a job 2 states away, nothing glamorous, just something honest. "I wanted to see you before I go," she said, "to tell you that you were right to leave. I had to lose everything to understand what I threw away." I nodded, still silent. She looked at me for a long time, maybe waiting for me to say something that would make her feel forgiven. But forgiveness doesn't always need words. Sometimes it's just the absence of resentment. I told her, "I don't hate you. I just learned where my peace lives, and it's not where I left it." She smiled faintly, a tired kind of smile, and for the first time since all of it began, I saw her as human again, not as the person who broke me. Just a woman who finally learned what silence can teach. Before she turned to leave, she said softly, "If I ever get the chance, I hope I find someone who looks at me the way you used to." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She walked away slowly, and I watched her disappear down the street until she was gone. That night, I drove to the coast one last time. The same beach where I'd found my calm. I sat there as the sun dipped below the water, phone off, engine quiet. It hit me then. Not every story ends with revenge or reunion. Some end with understanding. She found her lesson. I found my peace. And that was enough. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.